In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 187 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is passion. Our quote of the day comes to us from Oprah Winfrey. Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode. It will be pretty hard to miss the passion that Rock Thomas has for both what he does as well as helping others. On today's episode, Rock goes into his morning routine, the importance of authentic relationships, as well as the significance of asking quality questions. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Rock, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Excited.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Always ready to bring it, brother.
Awesome. So as I mentioned before we went live, the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you had either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Well, one of the things that I've gotten accustomed to is that in life, if you do it as difficult, life will be easy. And if you do it as easy, life will be difficult. And I was fortunate enough to grow up on a farm where I had a lot of difficulty in my life, feeding 22 horses before I got to have breakfast, working in the bitter cold in Canada, fixing frozen pipes and things like that. So there's many, many stories of not giving up. I think that the ultimate confidence comes from your ability to know that you'll find a way because you were in dire circumstances with little resources, but you became a resourceful person. And that gives you the confidence to always find a way. And unfortunately, we live in a world where people are pretty soft and they don't have to gut that out. And I think it really works against them in the long term.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I do think a lot of times we look for the easy way out. And I think in today's day and age with social media, a lot of people are looking for that quick fix or that quick million and things like that. So I wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
Yeah, so the first 20 years of my life, from the age of 17 or from the age of 8.5 to about 28.5, I worked really hard as a laborer, as a carpenter and anything that was manual labor, because that's what I was exposed to growing up on a farm. My father always taught me life is going to be difficult. You'll have to work hard. And so that's what I believed, and it was ingrained in me. And then when I was in my late 20s, my father got diagnosed with cancer, and I stopped working to take care of him. And about 1.5 to 2 years later, I had lost the 3 homes that I had purchased. I lost my job in the airlines. I sued the company for wrongful dismissal and lost more money, paid off my father's debt while he was sick with cancer. And it was at that time that I met my first major mentor that told me, if you take your work ethic, Rock, and you turn it into sales is the highest paying position you can have, then you're going to do really much better. And I opened up to that. I was very coachable. And within 4 years, I became the top real estate agent selling 100 homes a year. I went on to buy the company from my mentor and sold $1 billion of real estate a year and wrote a book. So it was really about transitioning from, one way of seeing the world with my first mentor, my dad, to a more educated, a little bit smarter guy. He was a CPA. and just taking the same passion I had for life and turning it into a success story.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's very interesting that you touch upon the different phases in your life. And I wanted to ask you, knowing that you've obviously been successful in and out of the real estate world, how do you personally define success?
So I believe I coined a frame called the whole life millionaire. And what I believe is that, the greatest thing is to have choice in life, to do what you want to do when you want to do it. In order to do that, the truth is that money does make that easier. So I believe that you really should be able to have the ability to create wealth and leverage it through your vision and have money working for you so you can be free. So that's number one, or not necessarily in that order, that's a piece of it. Number two is authentic relationships. The ability to be really vulnerable and truthful with the people around you. It's not always easy. A lot of people don't like to hear the truth, but I think that when you can get there, you can have a really much more happier existence because you're authentic to yourself. And then the third piece that I am always passionate about is energy. I think that we live in a world where, everybody's trying to get our eyeballs and give us, Red Bulls and Snicker bars. But I think if you really take care of your health, I'm 56 years old. I work out about 3 to 4 hours a day. I think if you take care of your body, my father always taught me, if you want to help the health system, don't be one of the sick. If you want to help the economy, don't be one of the poor. So I always try to take care of my health, take care of my finances, and then you can ultimately give back to other people. So success to me is those three pillars primarily.
No, I love that you mentioned the authentic relationships and being vulnerable. And I was just on a podcast a couple of weeks ago myself, and we got into the concept of vulnerability and being vulnerable. And I think a lot of people often think it is in regards to being weak, and I don't think it is. I think it's actually the opposite. I just wanted to ask your take on the whole concept of being vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Christopher. I think vulnerability is admitting that you're human. The biggest fear we all have is that we're not enough and we're not going to be loved. So the strategy that we use is to cover up our weaknesses or what we think are our weaknesses, but it actually creates this distance. If you've ever imagine going to church and there's this perfect couple, they dress perfectly and their 2 kids are perfect and they're always smiling and they never have a tooth out of place and they're always, something's wrong with that picture. You can't be perfect all the time. But that person who you kind of like who's really down to earth is because they're real and they've got their teeth out of place and they baggy pants and they spilled some ketchup on their shirt, and you're like, you can relate to that person because they're not trying to have this veneer. So I think it's really about being the version of you that's real and falling in love with your little quirks. I'm still learning how to do it. And then when you do that, people are more comfortable with you.
No, I love that, and I couldn't agree more. Is people are not perfect and things are not perfect. You can have a perfect day or a perfect afternoon, but the reality is we all go through those challenging times. And I think, like you said, being vulnerable is, I actually believe it's powerful. So I want to change lanes for a minute, and I wanted to ask you, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Passionate, I guess.
That's a great word. And one of the things we always look and we always talk about is the importance of a morning routine or a daily routine. And I was curious if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
Yeah, so in my book, I say, tell me what you do before 8 o'clock in the morning and after 8 o'clock at night, and I can predict your financial future for the rest of your life. But it really is, you've got to win the morning. You wake up and your brain is looking to survive. And if you just listen to the news, it's going to get freaked out. So for me, I have a variety of things I draw from, but I like to say I like to agitate my brain and agitate my body first thing when I wake up. So I usually get up and I do 57 push-ups, which is one more than my age, to agitate my body. Then I'll listen to something motivational. I have something recorded on my phone that's 5.5 minutes long with some motivational music and my voice in the background with my I am statements, the words that follow I am follow you. I am gifted, guided, grateful, powerful, passionate, playful, sexy, sensual, sensitive, and blessed. And it goes on for 5.5 minutes, describing me at my best, my highest version of me. So I can remind myself when I am in that place, how I operate and how I show up. I'll also write things, journal, and meditate. And I spend a good amount of time, even before I get out of bed, visualizing what I want to create, do, be, have, or experience. So to me, the morning routine is absolutely crucial. I'm very committed to it. And it can last between 15 minutes on a busy day and 4 hours on a day when I'm, taking a little bit more time to enjoy myself.
So interesting that you touched upon the importance of winning your morning and winning your day. Is we've had so many different guests that have almost said verbatim exactly what you just said, because it's so important that you control the day. And I've never heard the question or the comment you said about asking what you do before 8 a.m. and what you do after 8 p.m. But I think it is so important, because I interviewed a gentleman and he was talking about the way to win your morning is actually how you prepare the night before. So I think it's really neat how you talk about before 8 a.m. and after 8 p.m.
I agree 100%. So you set the tone the night before. My goal is to get into my room around 9:30, and then I start reading, journaling, and asking myself several questions. And a lot of it has to do with celebrating the day, acknowledging myself, what I'm grateful for, and then visualizing how I'm going to wake up. Because if you fall asleep watching TV or unconsciously, you wake up unconsciously. But if you take a few moments and visualize yourself as soon as it's 5:06 or your alarm clock, or you just wake up naturally, and you've already preset that, and you're like, I'm going to jump up, I'm going to smile, I'm going to drink a glass of water, 57 push-ups, look out at the trees and celebrate and feel great about my life. If you don't set that the night before, chances are something else will happen.
No, I definitely agree. And I think it's so important. And I think that you touched on it perfectly as far as how you set it up. So as a very successful author yourself, I've found that almost all authors are avid readers. So I was curious if there's anything that you're reading currently or something you read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Oh my God, there's so many great books. I read all the time. Of course, listen on Audible as well. It just depends on what genre. I recently read The Principles by Ray Dalio, who is the greatest hedge fund operator in the world. Super book if you're into business and running teams. If you're looking to let go of some of your trauma from the past and really get into a more of a Zen spiritual way of accepting things, I would recommend The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, who also wrote Untethered Soul. And if you're looking for a classic and you're struggling around money, The Richest Man in Babylon is a good book as well.
Well, that's awesome. So speaking about books, your book, The Power of Your Identity, before we went live, you told me that you're releasing an updated version this April. I wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I wrote it 10 years ago, but as you know, with technology and social media, things change. So it was time to update it a little bit. Essentially, I wrote it because when I grew up, I was ridiculed for having a lot of acne, and I had this nickname called Pizza Face, and for a better part of 20 years, I carried that with me, hiding and putting women's makeup on. And I went to Australia to where it's sunny to try to dry my acne because I felt ugly and I was laughed at so much. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw Pizza Face, this kid that was not wanted or loved. And then later on, I learned through NLP the ability to change the labels. You are not your labels. And a lot of people think you're stupid, you're dyslexic, you're this, you're that, you're ADHD. And people use it as a limiting behavior model. And when I learned you could change it from whatever you were told to whatever you want it to be, just with passion and intention, I changed it to model Clint Eastwood, and I became ruggedly handsome. And I said that over and over and over again in the words that follow I am, follow you. And I became confident in that embodiment. And I thought, let me write a book about this because it completely changed the way I saw myself, my confidence. I went on to become a model and a whole bunch of other things. So now there's a formula, a 5-step formula in the book on how you can change any limiting label that has been suggested to you by people that you admire or love, which is usually the ones that carry weight, and install a new one.
That's incredible. And you discussed the NLP, and I just wanted you, wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about that, because it's something that I think is thrown around in a good way throughout social media.
Yeah, so neuro-linguistic programming is really the basic association of words to your neurology. So if you say, I'm tired, then you're sending a message to yourself to behave in a tired way. If you say, I'm excited versus nervous, you're sending yourself a message to behave that way. So you want to consciously be speaking to yourself in a way that's empowering and resourceful. So the study of NLP is really about understanding the power of the words that create your world and the use of your physiology. It's been proven you can stand in a Superman pose, which is with your chest forward a little bit, your shoulders back, and your hands on your hips. And if you stand there for 2 minutes, kind of casting out over the geography in front of you, as though you're Superman, you'll actually send endorphins into your body, feeling more confident and better. Most people don't realize that their physiology, the way they carry their body, leads to their emotion, and that they can snap out of it, changing it. So for me, that's been very powerful in being able to, getting up and doing 57 push-ups. It changes the way you feel about yourself. And most people kind of ho-hum struggle to the coffee machine, and they spend half their morning in a daze. And NLP is a great, great education on learning how to change that.
No, I love that. And I didn't ask before, but 57 push-ups straight, or do you do them in spread out?
57 straight, baby. I can do 82, but I usually do 57. And my goal is to see how long I can continue to do one more than my age.
That's awesome. And when did you start doing that with one more than your age?
Well, 6 years ago, I started a mastermind group, and we do a push-up challenge at every one of our events. And I was fortunate enough to win most of the events, even against 20 and 30-year-olds. So it's just, after a while, when you do 1,000 push-ups a day just for the fun of it, you start to realize that, you become creative. And one day somebody said to me, oh, well, I get up and I do 41 push-ups, one more than my age. And I thought, well, wait till you're 56, buddy. Let's see how you go. And that was just a challenge for me to take on.
No, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to try that challenge myself. So thank you for sharing that.
How many do you have to do then?
41.
Okay. Perfect.
So one of the things we often talk about and ask is if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version yourself one piece of advice. Now, assuming the 20-year-old version of Rock would have listened, what's that advice you would like to have given the 20-year-old version of yourself?
It's such a great question. There's a lot of things, but I would say is be patient with your relationships. I grew up with a father that was partially German and very demanding and very unforgiving when you made a mistake. And I learned how to be that way in my relationships. And it served me in some ways in that, I'm very good with my integrity. If I say I'm going to show up, if I don't show up, it's because I'm dead. But I didn't give people the same grace, not having come from the same background. And I think I broke some of my relationships because of that. So I would say cherish your relationships, truly seek to understand the model of the world that the other people are coming from. Remember, humans are variable, and people are going to have a month where they're a jerk, even though they're your best friend, because they're going through something. Let that period of time go through, be patient, and wait, and cherish the relationship long term. That would be, I think, the most important thing for me.
No, I think that's great advice, and I love one of the last things you said, which is seek to understand. I think so many people go into relationships to start it quickly and have it go, and not that there's anything wrong with being optimistic, but I think you really need to seek to understand. And then I loved how you touched on the fact that people go through things, and I think that's something that I know personally I'm trying to work on, but you never know what someone's going through, and you never know if they seem like they're in a bad mood or they seem like they're being a jerk that morning or that afternoon. The reality is maybe they just got some horrible news or somebody was sick or something like that. So I think it's so important to seek to understand, but it's also about really trying to understand that people go through things in life at different times.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know how they're processing it and what it means to them. And I'm not saying be soft. I'm just saying be a little more gentle, be a little bit more patient. Sometimes the best thing to do, I've learned, is nothing.
I like that. And I think the follow-up to that too is sometimes it's better to not say anything at all than it is to respond or react to somebody.
That's exactly what I mean. You get an email from somebody, you get something that happens, or they say something, and you get all fired up. If you just waited 24 hours, you realize, they borrowed your car without asking because they had to, run to the hospital with somebody. So it's just slow down, allow things to kind of settle, and then respond.
It's interesting. I was talking on a podcast and we were talking about just that same idea, and I was discussing it with a psychologist, and the idea of the throw it away concept came about. And what he had talked about is if you need to respond, what you do is you write that email out or you write that text exactly how you want to say it, but then you delete it and you don't send it, and then you wait 24 hours and you respond that way. And I think it's so simple to say it and to hear it. It's obviously not as simple to do it or not do it, but I think it's so important, and I'm really glad that you touched on it, because sometimes we always want to react right away, and sometimes it's best to think about it and then respond at a later date when you've calmed down or you've thought about it more.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I've done that, and sometimes just getting it out and putting it in writing and not even sending it feels good. It's a little therapeutic.
Yeah, the one suggestion that the gentleman had is he said when you go to write it, he said make sure that when you reply to the email, so it's in you delete the address so you don't by accident send it.
Oops.
So one of the things, Rock, we talk about often, and on our clothing line we have on the back of our clothes is #accountability. I wanted to ask you what the word accountability means to you.
Oh my God, you're talking about one of my favorite words in the English language. It means that when you say you're going to do something, you frickin' do it. Zero excuses, and you're responsible for your whereabouts. You won't always be able to execute, but you can at least keep people abreast of what's happening. And I like to say when I'm in a new relationship with somebody, business-wise, what have you, over-communicate. If I'm supposed to get you a contract by Friday, and Friday comes and then we get on a call and I'm like, well, I don't have it, not acceptable. Prior to the time it's due, I reach out to you and I say, hey, Christopher, that document I'm supposed to have you on Friday, looks like I need an extension to Monday. Is that cool? And then you feel like I care about our relationship and what's happening. You're conscious of it. I say to people, if you're a parent and you're going to pick up your child at 3:00 after school and you're on the other side of town negotiating a deal, do you say, you know what? I think I'll get my kids tomorrow. I'm not in the mood. I'm busy. No. You always find a way, even if you have to call a friend, call your mom, get a neighbor to pick them up, or you drop what you're doing with a business client. You go, listen, I have to go get my kids. Everybody will understand. That's freaking accountability, is owning it like you're picking up your child and communicating in a way that there's never a doubt. It's 100% crystal clear. And if people did that more, and here's the deal, is your cells are listening to the conversation you have with yourself. If you say to yourself, I'm going to work out tomorrow morning, and then you don't, you damage yourself, because the next time you say, I'm going to go build my business, your brain goes, bullshit. So you got to be accountable to yourself, accountable to other people, because if you're not, it's all going to erode away and you're going to have a life that's worth zippity-doo-dah.
No, I love how you define that, and it is for us the zero excuses. But what stood out even more to me in your response is the whole idea of over-communicating. I think in today's day and age, where it's so much easier to communicate with technology, I find it so ironic that we all are guilty, I believe, of under-communicating. And I think it's something that is simple. And your example of with a contract or something, to say, hey, it looks like I might need another day or two. Would it be okay? That is so much better and more proactive than the next day sending somebody a detailed 3 or 4 paragraph long excuse. Well, and this happened and that happened. And I think for some reason, it goes back to what we said before about being vulnerable. You have to be willing to pick up the phone or send an email or text and say, hey, had a little bit of an issue with this. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it to you by 4:00 today. As I said, is it okay if I send it to you first thing tomorrow morning? And I think it's so easy to do it. But again, you're just putting yourself a little bit vulnerable, but also being so much more respectful of that person's time or expectations of you.
Yeah, and you build up an emotional bank account. If you and I are meeting for coffee at 4:00 and I run into some traffic and I text you and I say, you know what, Christopher, it looks like it might be about 6 minutes late. I hope the traffic eases up. And I arrive 2 minutes late. You're immediately thinking, Rock is conscious. Rock actually respects my time. He really cares. And then the next time something happens and I'm a few minutes late and I've let you know, you realize that, okay, he's cool. He is conscious. Most of the time I'm on time, so you respect that as well. But if you're just like, oh, well, dude, it's only 5 minutes late. What the hell? What's the big deal? Immediately, why is your time more important than my time? So I think that when you over communicate and you tell people and give them a heads up, not with excuses. I don't want the story. I don't like, oh, the dog ate my thing. Blah, blah, blah. No, I would like an extension to complete on that. If you probe me for details, what the hell happened, then I can explain it. But I'm not about the excuses. I'm about execution. I'm about efficiency. I'm about get shit done kind of guy. And then eventually you will see that I come through 98% of the time. The one time I drop the ball, you're going to go, no worries, bro, I got you.
No, I love that, and I think it's so important. And it doesn't take anything other than 12 seconds to write that text message and say, hey, I'm going to be about 5 minutes late. I apologize. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you're there 2 or 3 minutes earlier than that, and it stands out, and you leave an impression on somebody.
Yes, 100%. And I think it's about respect for me. It's about the interaction you and I are going to have, being prepared, being honorable. I'm a little old-fashioned that way, but I really think that I guess I was raised that way, and I think today people take things for granted. It's like people go, well, I wasn't going to respond to your email because I was working on it. I go, yeah, but there's a pitch and catch that has to happen here, and how am I supposed to know where you are? It'd just be great to know you got it and you're working on it. Yeah, I got it. I'm working on it. It just, to me, that's the word accountability. Oh my gosh, especially with the younger folk, it's don't get me started.
No, and I love how you touched about respecting both your time and theirs. And I've said that to clients of mine that are late as well too. Is it's not just being disrespectful to my time; it's also being disrespectful to your time because you're not holding yourself accountable when you said you were going to be at a certain place. And I think it's just interesting how people look at it differently. So if you're okay with it, I wanted to change lanes into what we call our hot seat questions. And the only thing we ask simply is that you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
All right. Favorite sport?
Golf.
Favorite team?
New England Patriots.
Boo. Favorite smell?
Oh my gosh. Right now, I have these beautiful candles in my room that I don't know if it's lavender or what, but I love those right now.
All-time favorite movie?
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Favorite book?
Think and Grow Rich.
Great book. Favorite group or musician?
Lionel Richie.
And if you were in a foxhole and you could only have one person to have your back, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. Like somebody I know, or it could be anybody?
Anybody.
I think I'll go with The Rock.
Oh, great one. And if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I think it would probably be Richard Branson, just because I think that he's created a lot, but he looks like he has fun doing it. I think I could probably learn from that.
It's so interesting that you say that. Is he looks like he has fun doing it. I see so many people that I look up to that are very successful, whether it's monetary or they have a following, and I find that so many of them look very serious and they don't look like they're having a great time, and I agree with you. I think Richard Branson looks like he has a great time all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're dead serious but successful, is that really the way you want to live your life? Certainly not for me. I'd rather be playfully, happily enjoying myself on the way to success.
Oh, 100%. There's times to be serious, but it's also, you got to have fun in life.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there's very few times you need to be serious. There really is. Okay, so the contract didn't go, we lost $100,000. Does serious make it better? Doesn't really. Focus, yes. Focus, yes. I agree. But serious, I don't know.
No, I agree, and I like that. So I wanted to ask you before we go to the last question is, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you or follow you or find out more about you?
So basically, social media, Rock Thomas, or rockthomas.com, email, rockthomas.com is my website, where they can get a free copy of my book. Those are the best ways. I have some mastermind groups, Go Abundance and M1, but those are a little bit more inner circle things, but certainly start the relationship on social media.
And then last question is, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I mean, I think that we are meaning machines. We're constantly giving meaning to things, and focus creates meaning. I remember the other day I was playing golf and I turned on my phone and I looked at my little stock portfolio and it went down 20,000. It completely changed the way I felt in that moment. And I thought, had I not turned on my phone, I would have just happily been enjoying myself on the golf course. So I think that for people to be really conscious, focus is a choice and questions create focus. So you can ask yourself, what's great about this? What can I be grateful for? What might I be grateful for in the future? So I would say really develop an arsenal of some quality questions you can ask yourself that will create focus, that will make you feel good.
That's great advice. Listen, Rock, I truly, truly appreciate your time. I hope we can connect soon, and thank you so much for spending some time today on our show.
It's been a pleasure, Christopher. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to episode number 187. Rock shared some really interesting things with us, and I truly appreciate his perspectives. When it came to his morning routine, I loved when he said, "Tell me what you do before 8 a.m. and after 8 a.m. He also touched upon the importance of winning your morning, which leads to winning your day. That is something that has been touched upon many times throughout our show over the last 2 years. Rock briefly also mentioned his I am statements, which quite a few different guests have referenced within these last 20 to 30 episodes. A few different times, Rock discussed the idea of real, authentic relationships and the importance of being patient with them. In his closing remarks, Rock said that focus creates meaning. Focus is a choice, and questions, quality questions, create focus. What type of questions do you ask? Do you actually ask questions? I challenge you throughout the next few days to be aware of the question that you ask and the reason that you ask them. Don't ask questions just to ask them. Ask great questions to receive great answers. As you go for your greatness today, I would like to leave you with a quote from the famous football coach Lou Holtz. I never learn anything talking. I only learn things when I ask questions. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.